All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another webinar. Can you believe that we are in the month of September? And my team reminded me this morning that we're almost at the end of the month of September. So thank you for joining us this morning. We are very excited to welcome a longtime colleague and friend of ours, Poena le Roux of MeetingPal. Nicole Null will give us a little bit of an introduction to Poena. But before we get started there, I'm going to hand over to Kyle to do a little bit of announcements. Kyle and Poena and Nicole, you're welcome to unmute yourself on your side, and then I'll keep an eye on the waiting room. Thanks so much, team.
Thanks, Linda. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and thank you so much for joining us. Just a few marketing announcements before we start. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and it's going to be published on our YouTube channel and website. So please remember to like and subscribe to us. Then, if you haven't already, please do also subscribe to our newsletter. This way you can keep in touch with the TVDM Consultants team. Then TVDM Table Talks live discussion will also be happening next week, Friday at 9 a.m. This is a great opportunity to ask our consultants any community schemes related questions you have live. Please note that this feature is only available to paid members on our neighborhood. And if you would like to upgrade your membership, please reach out to me. And lastly, I would also just like to say a big thank you to everyone that came through for Let's Get Physical and our IDR workshop last week. It was so great to see you all. And that's all the announcements that I have for today. I'm going to hand over to Nicole to do the introduction or the bio for Poena.
Thanks so much, Kyle. Morning, everyone. I also just want to piggyback off what Kyle said. Thank you so much to everyone who did come out to the Let's Get Physical and our internal dispute resolution workshop last week. It was so awesome to touch base with so many of our Cape Town colleagues again, and even some of our colleagues from other places that made the trip down. It was really awesome to see you all. So without further ado, let me introduce everyone to one of our most esteemed colleagues, Poena le Roux. Poena is an IT professional with approximately 35 years of experience. He has been actively involved in sectional title management for over 20 of those years, serving as an owner, trustee, and a chairperson for his sins in a 50-unit self-managed complex. Poena also holds an MBA from Bond University in Australia and has completed various paddocks courses. He's the founder of a software development company established in 1992, which specialized in insurance and banking systems. The company has since evolved to streamline community schemes management. In 2017, Poena designed MeetingPal to facilitate voting based on number and value votes. Despite initial skepticism about the need for an e-voting application, he persevered. During lockdown in April 2020, Poena led his team to develop MeetingPal, ensuring it enabled compliant remote meetings. Since its launch in August 2020, MeetingPal has been adopted by thousands of bodies, corporate and homeowners associations, as well as pension fund administrators, companies facilitating thousands of meetings. The application is gradually expanding into the international market, which I know is very exciting. Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today, Poena, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining. Again, I also want to just thank those people that we've met up with in Cape Town beginning of this month. Feels like it was already last month. But thank you, everybody, then also for participating in this webinar. I'm by no means an accountant, so I'm coming from a system background. You will note that my deck is perhaps a bit more slanted towards the IT side of it. And then on that basis, I will then start the presentation. Unfortunately, I'm working on two screens, so I'm going to share my screen and you are going to see. Can you see my screen? Thank you. See, Carl, this time I've got it right. All right. So, okay. So I've been asked to speak about insights in appropriate accounting systems. So about the position on what is appropriate and what is an accounting system, and specifically as it relates to BC. So I think it's an interesting topic to discuss. And with that in mind, I would just like to just briefly identify the agenda. Sorry, at least as Zelina, you'll see that there are people in the waiting room. All right, so I'm just quickly going to touch base on what makes an accounting system appropriate for a BC, and then just again touch on accounting principles, because I think everything relates against the accounting principles. Looking at some systems in the market, we can constantly get asked what would be an appropriate system, and then address any of the questions out there. So from a technical point of view, from a system point of view, and I do apologize to my accounting colleagues on the call, accounting is very simple. On a system level, it's a debit and a credit, and we even derive and calculate the balance. So how difficult is it? You've got to have an entry on the one hand, an entry on the other hand. So it's fairly simple. And that is also the way that our owners are perceiving an accounting system. So that's part of the problem that we have. But the principles, or what's making it very difficult, is the reporting. How do we present that? How do we make it available to auditors for them to work on it? So effectively, the whole drive is around the standards that we need to comply with. So the standards are driving the reporting in terms of whether it's in a specific format. And for those of you that's already familiar with working with accountants and auditors, on the auditing side, on a body corporate, we will call something a levy, and they will call it a income. I mean, it's why don't you call it a levy? So it's in terms of the standards that we need to look at. So if we look at what the owners see and what they expected is, it's where they would have a bunch of inputs on the one hand. We would take into consideration the bills, slips, invoices, and whatever, and then we'll just put it in this little percolator, the system, and from there we will, oh, sorry, that was me. From there we will get a levy statement, and ultimately we need to get a audited financial statement that we need to cater for. So it's very simple. Again, from a technical point of view, it's very simple. From a user point of view, from an owner point of view, and you know, I constantly wear an owner hat. So from an owner's point of view, there we go. It's not too complex. However, if we look at the reality of it, it is fairly complex. And in terms of the South Africa, and I've specifically used this an analogy. I've been in the last couple of years throughout my career worked with Americans in system development, and we are used in South Africa that if you buy a percolator, that is all that it needs to do. It's got to be a percolator. The South Africans do, but or that's the US market. In the South African market, if you buy a percolator, promise you within a week somebody will come to you and say, listen, where do we and the beans that we put into this percolator? And then a week later, they'll come to you and say, we need to roast the beans. So it is constantly a growing scenario and a growing requirement from a system point of view when we provide systems into the South African market. But this is typically the scenario that we need to take into consideration regarding all the intricacies, the pipes and the plumbing that we don't see on the front end. We only see the cup of coffee in our hand, and that's ultimately what we want. We want the levy statement and the AFS. And once we have that, we're happy. We don't care how it's, what are all the gears that needs to be put in play to get there. Sorry, I don't know if it's, no, it doesn't look like a chat. Please just keep me honest there regarding that. So that's the principle that we need to look at. So we have two approaches on systems, and again, I'll use the top scenario there is where we in South Africa have a value-based stream. So we need to look at the whole chain, and we develop systems, and we look at systems. When we look at a system to implement and to drive our business and for an accounting practice, we look at a system that, and those are by no means the full list, but we're looking for something that can drive from a budget through to inventory management. So we do not worry as such as to the level and the depth of the functionality provided. So we look at the complete system, whereas if you go down into the Uber model or the American market, they are very siloed in their approach, and they're looking at different, where you got to provide one function, and that function's got to be darn good. So you just need to provide an absolute star or a gem in one siloed approach. So those are the approaches that we have in terms of accounting. So we can also, in South African market, we can take a component and put them together. If you're a bit more technical, and I'm not sure, I won't call them out, but I have had some engagements with managing agents that are building, they're running on a core accounting system, but they're also extending it through other applications and adding on to that to actually drive a bigger value chain in terms of the process. So they are starting off with a core, but then they are actually extending it with a bit more of on the value chain. So what is an appropriate? So this is a question that we get asked quite a lot, and the answer is very complex on the one hand, in that the questions get asked, can I use Excel? And yes, I have seen accounting systems run on Excel. Is it pastel? And we'll get to the differences in a bit in terms of the pros and cons of them. But so Excel is on the one extreme, SAP is on the other extreme. It's a very big, very expensive system. It's an enterprise system. And I don't know if you follow any of the news, but typically companies spend billions of rands on implementing SAP systems. Then we also have in the South African market, we do have the We Connect You and the BCM Track, and we will have on the international market, we have the Urbanize or the MDA MRI, or Red Rogue in South Africa, and MeetingPal. So there are different systems that can fulfill the accounting practice for you, and which one is right for you, wrong for you, and fit to use. Doesn't really matter in this specific discussion what is appropriate. So the appropriateness lies in the ability to provide accurate and complete information. And it's to provide a reflection on the financial position of the body corporate, so that the auditors, when they come in, and they don't call it an audit, they call it an assurance. So when they come in, that they can audit the body corporate set of accounts, so that they can have a quick turnaround. And I'll touch on the why this is important as well going forward, about the auditors and their turnaround in a while. But if we'll also look at the SDSMA, Rule 26.4, compels us to have audited financial statements ready for a general meeting, and the general meeting should be called within 4 months. So if we take that into consideration, the process for us to ensure that the auditors are speedy and can react quickly, it is the quality of our financial statements or the reports that we provide in the accounting system that will allow them to do a quick turnaround on the audit. So if we look at a BC, and specifically this is about body corporates and the appropriate systems around that, they have two things that drive them. They have levies, and we all know the story. Owners want to pay as less as possible, little as possible. Every time there's a 2% increase, everybody goes ballistic. I was in a meeting the other night where they went for a 24% increase, which did not go down well, but eventually we got it through. But so we want to reduce the levies, but we also need to drive compliance. So it's a bit of a dichotomy in terms of how do we approach it, what's appropriate in our system. I mean, Excel is free, effectively. Everybody's got it on the systems. through their Office 365 subscription. Pastel is costing money, and we know that everybody has got different ways of costing their systems. But ultimately, that's the position that we look at. Is we also are driven by owners not wanting to spend money on even maintenance, let alone on accounting systems. So if we look at the appropriate systems, the quicker you have your financials statements ready, the quicker you are in a position to call on your AGM. Now, for us to call the AGM, and because of the approval of the budgets and things like that, that will give us the ability to drive our fees and the collection of levies, and cash is king. So a lot of BCs are also making the mistake of looking at the accounting systems in terms of the projected income, but they don't look at the cash flow. So we in an accounting system also need to look at the accounting system. With a lot of respect, as a managing agent, we have quite a number of them. We're all small businesses, and in terms of our turnover, it might look good, but our ultimate problem is every end of the month we need to pay the salaries, and we've got to look at cash. So if we have cash flow, then we can actually then drive the business and going forward. So the benefit of having a system in place then for us on the position about accounting is that we can then place reliance on the system to check and fast track the audit and process and reduce audit cost. Let me just stop at the audit cost for a moment. So currently, as MeetingPal, we do sit in on quite a number of meetings, and we see a trend coming forward in the process of auditing. So there's two trends. The first one is that there's a delayed process and delay in providing audited financial statements. Now, there are two reasons for that. The one is, on the one hand, if we don't provide them sufficient information or quality information, then it will take them longer to do the audit. The other side of the coin is also that we are losing skills, and that has now caused some auditing practices to where we would, and again, back to the levies, and the impact on the levies. In the past, we were all used to paying 5,000 Rand for an audit, but the 5,000 Rand audit fees are typically based on quality data and quick turnaround time. If we use something like Excel and they've got to rebuild all the set of accounts to be compliant, that leads up to a massive cost in terms of that we need to spend more time in the audit. And I have lately seen some audit proposals for 250,000 Rand. Now that is rather expensive. I see the trend is to be anything from 15 to 25,000 Rand nowadays, with a fair amount of 50 to 70,000 Rands as well. Now, those are quite hefty numbers if we look at our levies, and the process that we can then ensure to reduce the audit fees is to have proper and accurate data, with a lot of other aspects into play, like system controls, so that we can see, that there's a debit and a credit. And this is typically where Excel fails, is you can have a debit, but it's not going to force you to do the credit on the other side, or vice versa. So the controls are important. No manual interfaces or manipulation. So which I've not even mentioned, there's QuickBooks and some smaller packages out there, where you can literally, if you make a mistake, you don't do a journal entry, you just go into the database and fix the information at the bottom end. So in terms of compliance and auditability, it becomes a massive problem if we can manipulate the data without going through the system control and through a process. And as much as we ourselves as managing agents and or clerks hates the journals, that is the only way for us to actually track and reverse or make changes, so that we have a full-on audit trail regarding that. We also see a lot of questions being raised on the sectional title groups and on Facebook about offline accessibility. People want to see their statements and they need to be available offline. They need to access their set of accounts, the invoices and whatever on the offline position where they can access it on that side. We need quick turnaround time. And in terms of turnaround, it's also important for us to note that if we look at interest rate typically, it's not a good position to know every 2 to 3 months what your financial position is. I'd like to know on a daily basis typically what my interest rate would be. So the accessibility to reliable information and the quick turnaround time is important. We also need to look at a role-based accessibility. I don't, and I'm not going to go into the fight and all the argument about Poppy and what people can and can't see. That's outside of my pay grade. So in terms of that position, the position that we find quite often on role-based information is that owners want to see, some owners want to see everything and some owners don't want to see anything. So it's that process of finding the right balance, and the system that we need to elect or look at needs to allow us to do a presentation view to owners on the front end, as well as the controls around who captures it, who releases it, who approve it. So all of those needs to be done as well on the role base. And then on the data integrity side, it's important that, as I said, data cannot be manipulated or tampered with, because that gives that totally puts all the hard work that you do in terms of capturing the data, even if you're so diligent, if the integrity of the data becomes questionable, then we are also in a position where we are going to lose out on our ability to have quick turnarounds. And just as an overall situation, the moment you get there and owners start questioning the integrity, then we all are on the back foot. So savings on the audit fee will, at the end of the day, reduce levies. So it's important for us to also take into consideration. We want to take that into account. Are there any chats that I need to follow? Sorry.
Yeah, Poena, there's just one question. It's, do you cover the how in the system, i.e. restrictions, resolutions, etc., that back or support the spending of funds in MeetingPal, or is it just the debit credit requirements?
Okay, so let me just start off by answering the first question. MeetingPal is not an accounting system. So we just from an independent point of view, looking at lots of meetings and looking at that principle, and being a system engineer, we're looking at all the requirements that needs to be covered there. So the how and what needs to be done. This is an interesting question. It gets back to the question regarding the model of Uber systems, where you can add on the hows based on a core, or whether you have it all in one system. So the new term that we're facing, or that especially in the South African market that we're seeing, is the principle of property management systems and or solutions. So where everything is built into one. But the problem, and I'll get into that just now, is the adaptability, the agility, the big words that we're now using now. I'll cover that. Yes, Sandy, I agree with you. I don't recommend Excel at all, but again, there are people that's using it. So remember, if you start, and I'm saying this with a lot of respect, if you're a new MA and a PM and you want to break into the market, you want to go on your own, cost is of a concern, and it is a starting point, but it's not a good starting point. But it is a starting point. At least you can work on that. Yeah, Sandy, 400,000 rand on a timeshare. It's the same thing. I mean, the cost of audits are exorbitant, or not exorbitant. It's becoming expensive. So we just need to look at that on that basis. So I've got the chat open on this side as well. Right. So can the appropriate system benefits owners and managers? Yes, owners need to understand that their monthly statements are as good as the quality that they have. They need to know their assets and their investment, and they need to track the position of their assets. And this is where, again, the updating and the reflection of the data is a bit critical in accounting systems. And some systems take a while to reconcile with the bank and show the true financial position, because it's got to be manually done. There's no import and no export of data. But the principle is that we want answers quickly, and we want it in layman's terms. I don't want to know about an accrual that might happen in. Hey, I'm simple. Just tell me I need to provide for this because it will come in that month. And then I know, okay, you refer to an accrual. I understand what we're referring to. Especially end of the financial years where we have some cost that might run over financial years. That is where we need to understand what will be the impact on our accounting. So those are the sorry, let me just go back. And then managing agents want to provide a quick and reliable service to bodies corporate. Again, with a lot of respect, they cannot spend 10 days on answering a query or an hour on answering a query. They would like to be in a position where they can literally just go and type in a query and then have a response and have it emailed to the owner, so that they don't need to spend hours and hours trying to analyze and trace the transactions and things like that. So on an accounting system, that would also, from a managing agent point of view, save us cost and also allow us to have a more efficient service at a reduced cost while still maintaining the income that we're getting. So that's the appropriateness on that side. Now, if we look at an accounting system, especially as it relates to bodies corporate, we need to look at a couple of core principles that we need to cover. So the first one is budgets. So we need to be able to draft budgets for the incoming or for the next financial year. And in terms of the financial years and the budgets, this odd period where we have between the end of the financial year towards the next AGM, that period in terms of the budgets, how do you cover for that? My approach is always to have an 18-month rolling budget so that I can then also cover for that four months in between. So I already have at the AGM, I have approval for that lull period. And I don't get challenged and a question, why does the trustees raise the budgets from willy-nilly by 10%? So in terms of that, we need to have a budget system that we can then control spend against the line items. As per the AGMs, the approvals are always on the budget, and then restrictions are normally around the line items that you can only spend within that, and there's a bit of leeway that you might be granted in emergency spend, but it's against the line item and it's against the budget. Now the budget then gives rise to gives input to the raising of levies, the calculation of the levies. So our budgets, our participation quotas and things like that needs to be accurately stored and or captured in the accounting system. And then as it relates to the exclusive use levies and the ring-fencing of contributions, there was a CSOS adjudication between Calston and Bougainvillea where the body corporate wanted to recover costs spent on the maintenance of exclusive use areas, and the adjudication was that the exclusive use levies were raised and it should have been ring-fenced for that maintenance. Now, it becomes tricky on an accounting system, sub-ledgers, ledgers, that we need to look into, take into consideration in using that. So over and above that, we also have the position where in terms of the maintenance and the 10-year maintenance plan, we also need to account in effectively and ring fence in the budget those areas that we also need to cater for in terms of the exclusive use areas. Now, we have two problems on the exclusive use levies. The first one is to have fair and appropriate costs that we can assign to them. And it's not only just going like, it looks like it's about, we're getting the garden service in twice a month. So it's not that. It's literally the total cost of upkeeping the use area that you need to take into consideration. And if you look at this specific adjudication, it also requires us to be more diligent in our accounting regarding going forward. How do we actually then allow and cater for that to be taken into consideration on that side? So, sorry. Amen. All right, sorry. In terms of the exclusive use areas, and then if we look at our 10-year maintenance repair plans, we also need to ring fence that. Again, on an accounting system, the problem that we have is accounting systems are looking at a year at a time that we're looking for, and 10-year maintenance plan spans over a 10-year period. So we effectively have to have budgets already in play for 10 years as it relates to our 10-year maintenance repair plans. So that's a bit of a accounting issue that we will face as we open up the set of accounts. We don't do future accounts and a set of accounts. So in terms of accounting, that is typically then done on Excel. But ultimately, my view is that the 10-year maintenance and repair plan should also be part of the accounting system, so it can be just brought in from that financial year into this one that we're now entering into, adding another year to it and things like that. So that is a tricky one. And why I'm also saying that is that it's important to ring fence the funds as well in that regard. I'm the financial director, I'm a trustee for our body corporate, and I do have our accountant with us on the call as well. So I'm glad that he can keep me honest in that. But the problem that we have is let's say, for instance, we have R1 million in our 10-year reserve fund. We need to do some maintenance, and we've got some nice plans to do a bit of a revamp on the common property. I'm not going to go into this special resolutions and the improvements, and it's literally just looking at the funds and saying, man, we've got R1 million, let's do this. We can run it. So two things that we need to take into consideration there is that, especially as it relates to the capital expenditures, they were ring-fenced to be done in 2027 and 2029, and so those portions of the budget are, and the money is actually captured and reserved. We can't spend against it now. And the other thing is that we do is we spend it now, but then we fall below our 25% threshold. And if you're 100% subscribed, again, all of those things are becoming a bit of a mess. And in terms of our accounting, we need to cater for all of those spends and ring-fence the money around that. So, and then in terms of the multi-year accounting, as I said, the 10-year maintenance plans, it's spent over 10 years. And how do we account for that? How do we bring that into our accounting systems? And then a big thing that I'm seeing on the accounting system is inventory management as well. So part of the problem of accounting is also to track the balance of the assets and do a depreciation on the assets that we keep. So the problem is, how do we actually then track that and do management on that? And I'm not, again, there's SARS regulations. Do we depreciate it over the life of the use, or do we do it across the capital expense? So we need to look into that. So a lot of accounting systems, especially as it relates to bodies corporate, also need to have an element of inventory management in there. Now, not a lot of bodies corporates will actually keep an inventory management. And it's only when we get to the order that they will say, but we got to account for this or depreciate that, and then we don't know what it is. So approach is also then to take a policy or make a decision up front to say that we will depreciate the expense in 1 year. So there's no inventory management. So we will buy a lawnmower, we will depreciate in 1 year. So it's no longer an asset, so we don't need to account for it. But so there are different ways of managing that. So that's on that side. Now, if we look at some of the accounting principles, sorry, it's a weird, let me just open it up. It seemed like a good idea at the time to have it one by one. So if we look at how the auditors will look at it, and again, the accounting principles that we need to look at is we need to have a compliance and accounting standards. So there are standards that we need to follow, whether it's international standards. Well, most of them are international standards. So we fall within that, the IFRS or the GAAP. So we need to have a full-on compliance in terms of the reporting. As I said to you, from a system point of view, it's incredible, but these oaks are making it very difficult because we need to report in a very specific fashion. So we need to allow for accurate financial reporting to maintain clear records of transaction in accordance with these standards. Then it's to have an audit trail. Every system, and if your system that you're using don't have an audit trail, and I'm now referring to smaller systems where we don't have an audit trail, we don't know who did what. So it's important to know who did what, or what the values were before they were changed, or what the entries were. Now, again, on that level, there are two ways of doing it. It can just be the journals that you can track. I prefer, from a system point of view, I want to know you opened up this ledger and you changed the value from 1 to 2. That's on the audit trail that you can then have a view on what changes to the records have been done, by whom and when. And then we have our internal controls. So segregation of duties, we all, in terms of King and the King report, we all need to have the ability to segregate our duties. I may not typically load the bank and release the payment. I can load it and somebody else needs to release it. So in terms of that, we need to ensure that we have a segregation of our duties to ensure that different individuals have handled different parts of the process. Access controls, as I said, users are getting more spoiled in terms of user experience. Accounting itself is fairly bland in terms of the way it's presented as per the standards, but users are expecting a bit more pizzazz on the front end, so lipstick on the pig, as I would always call it. So typically we need to ensure that they would have that available, and then authorization procedures, who releases that, and then data integrity, accuracy, completeness, and reliability of financial data. That's key for us. We need to look at POPI compliance, and I'm just going to say this on POPI. So POPI has got 4 pillars. If you reduce it simply, it has to do with what information you collect, and we know exactly PMR 27 would explain to us exactly what you may collect. We also then have what you do with the data. May you onsell it, may you not onsell it. And then lastly, an important aspect is the logical and physical access to it. So this is where it becomes important for us to look at, and that's a specific one that we need to look at. Who's got what access to what kind of information, logically and physically, i.e. is it locked away? If it's on a paper format, how do we store it? And a GDPR is also important because of, especially in Cape Town area, you have a lot of European investors that buys into your body's corporate, and then you got to consider their GDPR as well. So if you disclose anything, they can nail you from that side in terms of them being a European citizen, and we think it's not valid in South Africa. If you look at Apple and Google being hammered for billions of rands of penalties, it is they do have quite a big stick that they can eat as well. Backup and recovery, that's just got to be built into the system. If we do it ourselves, if you use Pastel typically, there are some free accounting systems on Xero and or FNB, so that's important also. I've not mentioned a lot of these systems. There are too many of them to I'm just looking at the principles that you need to comply with in terms of backup and recovery. If you run your own pastel, remember the principle of the big concepts: airplane, train, and backup as well. So those are the big concepts that you need to ensure that you have in play. Compliance, tax, SARS regulations, VAT, pay as you earn, income tax, and your filings to SARS and SIPC, you need to take that into consideration. And CSOS, I forgot about CSOS. Well, I forgot about CSOS. So CSOS as well in terms of your filings there, supporting documentation. How did you derive to this, the accuracy on the financial reporting? And this is also something that can cause a bit of delay. Most of the financial or the accounting system would actually take and compile a trial balance. Again, from the trial balance sheet, then the auditors need to build the final balance sheet and income and expense and cash flow statements from that. If you have a system that actually provides you with a full-on balance sheet and not only trial balances, it allows them to be in a position to do a quicker audit. So that's also on the accounting principles on that side. If we look at scalability and flexibility, and again, we start off small. We all have aspirations to grow big and have a number of bodies corporates that we would actually manage. So you need to look for a system that allows you to scale and grow over time, so that you don't need to have, and this is where we get ourselves tripped up. We might start off with pastel on the one side and then move on to something else. And so eventually we need to be in a position where we can be scalable, flexible integration capabilities. Everybody wants to integrate into some scanning software, some this, some that. So that is also then. And then audit readiness, that's the principle. So transparency, accuracy, and reliability is the important one. Just briefly on the systems to consider. If I look at something like Excel, and I call it Excel, and then there's the off-the-shelf packages and then customized packages. On a cost basis, Excel cheap. Everybody, most people have it. We're all familiar with Excel. Off-the-shelf packages are not that expensive relative to customize. So what I'm warning you is, from a software development company, the moment you start getting into customization, you're actually moving away from being a managing agent to being a software development company. So that is just something that you need to take into consideration. High cost, accessibility, all can access Excel, so you can mail Excel to everybody, but everybody then can make changes to it. There's no control on it. They can challenge you on changes that they've made that you're not aware of. Then there's the in terms of the off-the-shelf, limited to the license holder. You can't expose it to more people. The friendliness of it is difficult. If you employ a new PA or a creditors or debit clerk or whatever, it's very difficult for them to get from it. Not difficult, but it's a learning curve. And then on the customization, so I'm going to just reliance. Load, not enforcing any accountability standards, correctness and completeness. We need to look at the correctness and completeness. Excel typically very low, customized very high, but at a cost. Compliance, Excel not compliant. On the other side of the coin is we have highly customized but highly expensive systems that we can then drive value on that basis. That is in essence a quick my view on what appropriate accounting system should look like. I'm happy to take any questions. I see there's Beverly. Can a scheme have a standalone system to that used by the MA? You can have a standalone system, and I do know of quite a number of more accounting principles. You see, I actually thought the meeting was only going to start in 15 minutes time. Fortunately, I got the reminder from Kyle and team. Anyway, so you can have that, but then you can't charge for that. So the principle is that why would you want to incur double cost, except if you don't trust the accounting system and or your managing agents in correctly allocating the fees. So yeah, it's a difficult one. Depends on the nature of yourself. I myself are also a bit of a control freak, so I'd like to know exactly what's going on. So that can be certainly something that one needs to look at. Any other questions? I'm cognizant of time. I don't know what time it is.
It's 11:15,
Okay.
or 14 minutes to 11.
All right. Sorry. I've been rambling on. Are there any questions? Please, I'm happy to.
Feel free to unmute yourselves and raise your hands if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask out loud. Oh, there we go.
Right.
Yeah, perfect. I don't know. There's a question. What is the cost of your system for a BC?
So MeetingPal, Bev, MeetingPal is a separate product. We run meetings, so I can give you the cost on that, but it's not for this specific meeting. CommunityPal, which is our product, but I'm not going to go into a costing system. Cost is relative. So cost, and I'll use the examples again. So there are costs out there that charge per unit, and they range anything from 3 Rand to 30 Rand per unit. I've seen some of those. It depends on the value that they provide, the market share that they carry, and then there are on the other scale. Even if you just go for an off-the-shelf package like MRI, MDA, it's fairly expensive, but they are geared more towards commercial properties. Though a lot of the PMs, especially the larger PMs, would also use that to drive community schemes. It's getting out levies and things like that. So cost can be literally anything from your annual subscription or your monthly subscription on Excel, which we don't recommend. So let's start off with low-end cost models, where it can be 3 Rand and more, up to, as I said, an unlimited fee. There are two things that you also need to consider. That if you form part of a managing agency, then they would have a cost structure that they will ultimately bring down to the owners, and collectively they can provide a better fee. We ourselves are a self-managed complex, so we pay for our pastor licenses, we pay for everything on our side, and our costs are, in my mind, quite higher than going through a managing agency. But it's just we've got our culture, and I say culture, everybody corporate has got their own culture. So our approach is we like to do it ourselves, and we'd rather pay more to have the control. So those are the issues that you face. And again, back to the levies, it's easier to have it through a managing agent, but in our case, that's not the scenario. So cost can be really a difficult question to answer.
Perfect. I saw that earlier Tyrone made an interesting comment where he said, when you made a mention that audits have obviously increased in price over the last few years, and he noted obviously the responsibility on auditors has also increased over the years. And I think that that's very interesting, but it also ties in, I think, with in a community scheme sense, over the years, the liability and responsibility has increased on like all stakeholders, I would say. The managing agent, trustees, and anyone who's doing this kind of work for bodies corporates. So that's also something interesting to consider. But it seems only auditors are putting their fees up a lot.
Yes, so I mean, if you look at the auditors, so if you look at all the audited financial statements, there's always a clause stating that their view is as good as the information they receive from the trustees. And the trustees also need to sign it off. So there's always this little back door in terms of, and I do understand, and I'm saying this with a lot of respect, if you go into a corporate environment, if you do an audit in a corporate environment, the guys will send out a bunch of clerks. They will spend weeks in your offices drawing all the slips and asking all the questions, and going down into a lot of detail. But for that, you pay. So it's you also get what you pay for. We just got to take that into consideration as well on that side.
Awesome. Anybody else have anything else? Otherwise, yeah, I think we can. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Shemna, put well done. I would say that's from the horse's mouth, eh? Okay, now so look, my 10 cents worth. I think it's very important to get the correct auditing firm. You know, it's all the same horses for courses, but some of these firms specializes in body corporates, which really makes it so much easier. So my advice will be get a very, very good firm, and then you'll see your work will be so much easier because they know what they're doing. Not the other ones, with all respect, don't know what they're doing, but these people specializes in it, so they know exactly, and they also address the issues in terms of the act and all that kind of thing. So that will be my advice. Get an auditing firm which specializes in body corporates because they have all experience, and yeah, then it makes life much easier. Okay, now well done.
I totally agree.
So there's a question from Nico van der Net. Hello, Nico. It's good om van jou te hoor. But any case, so in terms of the trust accounts, the money being held in trust account in a single bank account, yes, that does pose a bit of a historical problem, if I can put it that way. Remember, originally banks could not manage sub accounts and the approach that's required from modern banking. And a lot of managing agents have been around on trust accounts. There are some benefits of having a managing agency with a trust account in terms of FICA, rolling off and rolling on new trustees and signatories. We've just been through a process where it took us literally 2 years to close down an account because we could not change the signatories. So then we changed the trust account or the bank account. Just Sandy, I see your hand. Just two things on the trust account. So the trust account, not technically, it is also audited by the managing agent's auditors. So their external auditors will come in and do a full-on audit on the trust account. So you have that assurance. And then on the bottom end of it, they will provide you with your auditor will come in and do an audit on the transactions on your side. So you have two sides of professional bodies that will provide you the assurance. Whether we trust it or not, that's a different question. And this is the problem. Once we move away from a managing agent with a trust account, the unraveling of the transactions, moving the money, that takes time. Sandy?
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Just a question from my side. I'm seeing a lot of it's not just about the managing agent and the auditor doing their bits. I've also seen some invoices coming through from service providers that are not quite correct. So from my side, I actually set them straight and say, okay, this is how the invoice must look like. That's what the content that's the invoice must contain and all those kind of things. It's important that we have the right kind of trustees to check on these different things. Someone who's good with accounting and invoices and auditing and that kind of a thing can fulfill that role, because it's not just up to the managing agent. Remember, we can't just dump everything onto the managing agent. There's different experts for different things. So the auditor, trustees, managing agents, and obviously suppliers need to work very closely with one another to get this over the line, to make sure that we are compliant in terms of auditing acts, the CSAS Act, and all those kind of things. So to make sure that the complex is above board. The one other thing that people tend to forget is that we need to be registered with SARS as well. So unfortunately, it's one of those things people didn't know, but it's important that they right the wrongs of the past and try and do what we need to do to get compliance. Thanks.
On the SARS compliance, I can just give you a warning. Make sure that you fall on the register and your auditors register you in the correct category. We were originally on our side registered as a company, and we are paying back taxes like you can't believe it. They audited us. So just be aware of that. Annette, I see your hand.
Sorry, I'm just a trustee, but we've just lost a lady one of the trustee member who was by trade an accountant, and I've just received 2 incorrect statements as an owner. So I got very worried when you said that in actual fact, just remember that the auditor says in the annual statement that we're relying only on the information that we've been given. Now, as a trustee, what can we actually, as I say, on the first hand, we're slightly incompetent because we've lost a competent member. But on the second level, how can we guarantee that the information in that annual report is actually accurate if we're only relying on the managing agent's bookkeeping system? What kind of recourse is there?
True. So again, I mean, the problem, and it also, I think you asked the question earlier on. So also the problem that you face is that there are two problems, if I can put it that way. The one hand is you as trustee are ultimately responsible for signing off the accounts. And then the managing agent, they're professionals as well in terms of their approach, and they should then have the systems and things like that in play. They would also be audited in their approach and their set of accounts. But ultimately, it is a bit of a problem, and this is where we're getting ourselves in knots and crosses regarding being trustees, where, and I say this with a lot of respect, Dylan always say that managing agents are the suckers. They're doing the work for low fees. We as trustees are the real idiots because we do it for free and we take the accountability and the risk as well. So on that, that is specifically something, and it is always advisable to have somebody, or like in our case, none of our members are proficient. We have gone and appointed a bookkeeper to do that for us. So we then have a full and reliable set of accounts that we can then manage. And it also gets back to, you can run your own set of accounts and then validate it. But that's something that it's a difficult scenario that you face put yourself in. So
Awesome.
Ricky, checks and balances, yes. I see she private chat to me. Yes, so checks and balances are also going to cater for these discrepancies. If they're in play, whether you read them and don't, that's a different scenario. I would also suggest, as trustees, make sure that you get the financial management reports every month, that you go through them, that you also get your bank accounts, the statements on the bank accounts, and validate and confirm that the money is there and the money is properly accounted for, because that is typically part of the risk process that one can drive.
Awesome.
Yolandi, sorry, I see you're welcome to make contact with me afterwards. We've done some interesting stuff in the past with Pastel and Excel and SMSs, but that's a custom solution. I'll speak to you. Welcome to make contact with me.
Perfect. Awesome. So just a reminder to everyone, we are going to post the recording on our website and also on YouTube as soon as we can, or as soon as Kyle can. And yeah, just 1 minute before 11, I just want to thank everyone again. And a big thank you to Poena, of course, for being our guest of honor for today. I think people learned a lot.
Thank
yeah,
you,
very valuable. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely week.
MeetingPal itself is not an accounting system, but
Yes.
CommunityPal is definitely part of the mix. But the principles that we are, I'm here as MeetingPal today.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely week further. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.